Welcome, everyone. Welcome to the 2023 New Jersey International Film Festival Filmmaker Q&A session. We've been doing a number of these to promote the screenings and to provide information about the films after they've been viewed. Today, I have two wonderful guests. They're here to talk about their movie called Possum Kingdom. We have Virginia Yearick here. She's the director, and Erik Doty, he's DP. And he's an actor in the film too. And so we're going to be talking to these guys for the next 25 minutes or so. But before I start asking them questions, just so you know, the 2023 New Jersey International Film Festival is in its 28th year. We'll be doing the screenings as a hybrid, and they will be taking place between June 2nd and June 11th. There's a couple of films that are only film programs that are only available online. There were a number of films we really wanted to show, but didn't have space and time to show them in public. So those films will only be available online. And you can check out our lineup by going to njfilmfest.com. And I will show you guys at the end of the program how to navigate our website to get to our webpage. So anyway, welcome again. Virginia, tell me, how did you get to making this film? I mean, it's a pretty straightforward question. Your film focuses on a family that lives in South Carolina. It focuses on three generations or two generations of men and their families and the people that live in the surroundings. Tell us how you ended up making this film.
It is partially based on my family, but it's not a direct representation or documentary. But it's an area of South Carolina that I lived in. My mom grew up there, and then I lived there for about 2 years on that farm before I moved to New York.
Wow.
I've been making work there for a while, for several years. I'm an artist primarily, so it was mostly photography. And then I started making some videos, and then the film sort of arose out of that practice.
The film itself is a mix of fiction and documentary, as you mentioned in your notes that we have up describing your film. Was your film scripted?
It wasn't scripted, but we had a pretty set shot list, and some things morphed kind of as we were shooting. But for the most part, we had a pretty clear idea of what we were doing and where we were going, but it wasn't a tight script. Primarily because we weren't using actors for the most part, so I didn't want it to feel forced. So it was mostly, sometimes we would feed lines to people, but often that wasn't what we actually ended up using in the scene. It was just a starting point, and that would kind of start conversation between people.
But it's not an improv film, right? It's not improvised. It's
No.
something you did have a plan, right?
Yeah, we did.
And so I mean, the idea was that you focus, Erik, you're in the film, but you're also behind the camera. How did you work that out? I mean, in tandem with Virginia?
Yeah, she was super detailed, like really planned out with like a lot of these scenes, but because we were working with a lot of non-actors, it was something where it's like she had like a very specific, like, I mean, relatively overall, like, broad idea for what that scene was, and I was just kind of there to like facilitate it getting to that direction with it being like the most natural thing as possible. So kind of like I wasn't exactly sure how much like the scenes were going to come about organically, or if I was going to have to kind of be this like just kind of wingman, just kind of in the scene trying to get what we wanted from the person, which is that's like I'm really interested in that style of filmmaking, just like kind of documentary, but you're going into it with such a plan, or you're kind of just trying to steer it to your own direction. It's a really fun mix between the two.
Yeah, and I mean, I think it's hard to tell what is fiction and what is documentary. So I think you were successful in blending the two seamlessly. I guess, were there any, you had to go out on canoe and you had to do a lot of really interesting types of shots that were probably not that easy to do. And at times I worry, you know, what happens if the canoe tips over and you're in with a camera and everything else. When you were actually working on scenes like that, and the water is everywhere in this film, and the shot that's behind me is a really great scene that's from your movie, with kids in a pool and fishing out frogs. But water's everywhere in your film. Was that something that was tantamount and really important for you, Virginia?
Yeah, I mean, I think the river that we keep going back to, that was definitely, I wanted that to be the through line and the kind of connecting sinew of all of it. And I think water, especially for like the people that we're shooting with and like these young boys especially, it's just a great place to have them. It's like the thing that you're always looking for in the summer. And then it's also this like has a sacred element to it. It's a very Christian place, so there's always this like sacrament element, this baptism thing that's happening. And
Right.
yeah, I think
there are these scenes where, Erik, you're baptizing your brother, and then you want to be baptized by him. And I think he was looking at you. I don't know if I can do it, but I mean, that's part of this kind of sacred place vibe that you get. But you know, there's also lots of guns and lots of shooting of things. And was that something that was very much part of your life growing up there, or was it something you wanted to comment on?
Yeah.
Go
Either one,
ahead.
both of you. Yeah.
I'd like to hear from Erik.
Go ahead.
Go ahead, Erik.
Yeah, I mean, definitely none of that stuff even seems out of place. Like it's all so normalized here in the South. Even with the way that Lee was like reacting to like baptizing like and going the other way, it all seemed like so normal. It's like really, it's this really weird thing that when you're a kid, it is like funny, and you're just kind of like I don't know, people get so normalized to it as an adult that like we all do this really weird thing in this culture that exists like really heavily here. And yeah, the gun stuff is super normal. Like it doesn't really matter what little pocket of like a city or rural area in the South, everyone knows someone that is just like their normal Saturday or something. Yeah,
It's ubiquitous. I remember when I grew up in Charlottesville, Virginia. So
Okay.
it's not exactly South Carolina, and it's definitely not New Jersey or New York. It was definitely a different mindset. And we played, you know, Army and stuff when we were kids. So I definitely know what that's about. I don't think I ever have a BB gun though. I don't think my parents would let me have one. But I mean, that's the thing. Guns are shot off all the time. It is part of this environment. And I mean, it's a wonderful slice of life of a part of America that many people don't really know anything about. So was that something you wanted to present to the audience, Virginia?
Yeah, I mean, I wanted it to be again, I didn't want it to just read as a documentary, but I wanted the kind of fabric to be true to the place. And I just want the experience of the film to sort of be something that washes over you, and something that is similar to like the perspective of a kid, like Erik was talking about, where it's just all these things that you don't really think about because they're just around so much. So I just wanted that to be part of it, where it's not this like heavy comment one way or another. It's just like something that you're presented with and kind of surrounded by and a little bit overwhelmed with.
Right. We get a slice of life, the slice of life of this place, these people, and we're voyeurs. I mean, we're like silent witnesses to what goes on. And I guess I wanted to also ask you what it was like working with non-actors. You know, the nice lady that lives close by, and you know, the phone goes off, and so it gives it that realism that I think you wanted to grasp. But was it easy? Were there any difficulties working with non-actors?
Well, like I mentioned, I've been working in that area for a while, and a lot of it's been photography, but a little bit of kind of video work. So a lot of the people that ended up in the film are sort of used to me already being around with the camera. This was a little bit, you know, a bigger production, but I think I had developed some kind of rapport with a lot of the people that were in it. And then as far as the acting goes, like I said, we didn't script things very tightly because I didn't want to like force people to say lines that they weren't comfortable with and be extra aware. So Erik really was the kind of guiding force in all of that, and he kind of was the way that we could enter all of these different spaces and then get the scene to go where we needed it to go. But for each person, I would say it was a little bit different, where that woman that you're talking about,
Yeah.
that was very minimal as far as like telling her what we wanted to do. It was just, we would just show up and kind of shoot with her, and that was much more just whatever she gave us was kind of what we were going to use. But I kind of knew that she tells a lot of the same stories if you stick around long enough, so we're kind of waiting to get those stories to make sure that we could use them.
Yeah, the snake story.
Yeah,
That's her first story.
Yeah, and we actually have two different versions of that because I've heard it before, so I knew that we were going to get it at least once. And then with other people like Lee, the boy in the movie, he was probably the second. So if Erik was the only real actor in the movie, because he's not from there, he's not a part of that community, he was really dropped into it.
Wow.
Lee is sort of playing a different version of himself. And then other people were kind of just playing themselves and had different amounts of necessary knowledge about what we were trying to do.
That's pretty amazing, because Erik, you just kind of fit right in, and I would have never known that you were not his brother. And I guess that's what I liked about the film. We watched it as part of the jury, and we got so many really great features, and we're only showing 5 out of like 150. And it was just, some of the jury wasn't sure. Well, it's just kind of like a home movie. I said, I don't think so. There's a lot that went into this film, just in the way you structured the images. We get these really terrific long shots, like the opening scene where Lee is dribbling the basketball, and you're shooting him in such a way, and you think it's quite mundane, but then at the very end, without giving too much away, there's a dramatic moment that kind of gets the film moving. And there's quite a few of those scenes where you see things from far away, and little by little we get inside and we hang out with these people. And so you were able to create this environment which has a kind of realistic feel, but was somewhat manipulated, which I really liked. So I had some other questions. Where are we? I mean, is this Greenville?
This is Greenville County, South Carolina, so it's the lower part of the county. And the area is called Possum Kingdom. That's why it's the name of the film. But it's not, there's not a town called Possum Kingdom. It's just there's not a town there at all. So that's sort of the local name for the area.
That's what that was going to be my next question. Why did you call it Possum Kingdom? So because that's the name of the county, at least the endearing name, right? Like a nickname for the county.
Yeah, I mean, it was kind of the working title for a while, but I think after time it just was the only thing that made sense, and I thought it really fit the tone of the film, where it does feel like these boys have free reign over this sort of kingdom of theirs, even though it's not the nicest, but they have like such freedom to move around and kind of do whatever they want. So
well, you get the sense that they're not poor. But Erik is selling everything, hawking stuff at the pawn shop, and you're wondering why. And maybe he's trying to get out of there. Maybe he wants to purchase some stuff. Maybe he just wants to smoke weed with that money. So I think those things lead the viewer in a variety of different ways. And I think I like the open-endedness of the film, the fact that it led you down certain paths, but you weren't really sure of the outcome. Was that something you wanted to do?
Yeah, I think they're like you said, they're not poor, but there is a sense of sort of decline or something, or not a big sense of future, I guess I would say. So I wanted to communicate that.
Right. And Erik, when you were kind of dropped into the scene, did you know Virginia beforehand? Had you worked with her before?
I've known her for a little bit beforehand. My brother and her went to school together at NYU up there. So I'd kind of been around her enough. And I'm also like kind of from a similar, like I'm from Nashville. I have family in like a very rural part of Tennessee. So it felt like really similar to like, oh, I'm kind of this like jumping from like being a kid who's like kind of from the city here, like Nashville, opposed to this little bitty small town or something. That was kind of a role I'm somewhat familiar of playing of like really trying to blend in with this like with the scene that I'm not necessarily into. So yeah, and working with Virginia, like it felt really natural. Like it just felt like it went well. Like we didn't have any like huge hiccups for the most part. Yeah.
Cool. Virginia, I wanted to ask you why you use split screens from time to time. Was there a method to the madness, or you just felt it was right to do at that time?
I hope that there was some sort of method to it. It's something that I've used quite a bit in the past, like when I was making shorter videos, like short films about this place. And yeah, I was just interested in breaking up the screen formally, and then I just carried that into the film. I actually probably expected to use a lot more of that, but then yeah, I was really happy with the shots that we got, so I think a lot of them could just stand on their own.
How long did it take you to make the film?
Let's see, we shot it in the summer of 2021. Is that right, Erik? And then
Well, like the first stint, I think, right?
yeah, and then we shot it pretty quickly, but over the summer we made several trips down there. So as we were trying to catch different parts of the summer planting and harvesting season. So we were down there for the sweet potato planting. So Erik did a lot of manual labor that wasn't filmed, just to kind of earn some goodwill so that we could shoot.
Yeah, that was super smart on your part to like, oh, here, go help them at first, and then they'll kind of be like, oh, he's like down to do a lot of manual labor. I think that was like really smart to do on your part.
Yeah, that's nice of you to say it, that I made you do all the free work. But, yeah, I think that was really helpful, and kind of he did fit in really well with everyone in the family, and I think that was due in part to like, oh, he's here and he's a good worker, and he does fit in.
Very cool. I love the watermelon harvesting scene too. Those things were huge.
Yeah, they can be 80 pounds or something sometimes.
Yeah, that was amazing. And I like the way that you showed pretty much the scarecrow and all the things that you need to do to protect the food. And I just really love that. But these were the things that I saw a lot of in your film. I wrote down water, guns, farm, neighbors, and animals. I wrote those 5 things as main themes that I saw. And the interaction with animals is kind of interesting because it goes from where the snakes are seen as competitors, and they're dangerous, and yet they're not dangerous. You have a guy who's got a snake hanging out of his pocket when Erik goes to hawk some stuff. I think that's right? And then there's lots of dogs, and the dogs are part of the family and they're part of the team. And then there's the frogs that are, well, it depends on who's manipulating them, but if it's Lee, they're just kind of around and stuff. And then, I mean, so the interaction with wildlife is really interesting because it's seen as there's multiple ways of seeing that. Was that something of interest to you as well, or is it my animal lover side that's coming out and seeing those things?
No, I mean, I think animals are just a part of the fabric as well, as much as anything else. And yeah, sometimes they're loved and sometimes they're abused, like same with the people around there. Yeah, I think it's just another layer of the fabric there.
Very cool. I just wanted to ask you about the music by Tyler Stickley. Can you tell us a little bit about him and how he ended up working on your film?
Erik, do you wanna?
Yeah, sure. So I've he's worked with me on some other documentary projects and a few other like short film projects where he's just a good friend of mine who plays all sorts of weird instruments. He's really good on most string instruments, and then he has a like wild array of synthesizers and a lot of like kind of handmade weird things. So yeah, we just worked with him. Like he was able to kind of watch the film and like just kind of bounce back and forth. I think me and Virginia went out to his place a few times and recorded a few things there. So yeah, so it was kind of like a weird mix of him scoring some stuff and then him playing some stuff on his own with some direction. yeah, that was kind of the method of it.
Very cool. I saw you went to Clemson, initially Virginia, and then you got a film degree from there, and then you were able to go to do your MFA at NYU.
I just did a BFA. I've never studied film specifically.
Very cool. So you went from photography, and then at NYU, what did you study?
Well, in undergrad, I actually studied printmaking. And then at NYU, it's an interdisciplinary program. So I went in doing some painting and photography, and then started making some video there.
Right.
Not in a film program, but that is where I started making film.
Yeah.
And that's sort of where I thought that a feature film could be possible. And then in March of 2020, right after I finished at NYU, Erik and I were in India visiting a friend with his brother, and that was sort of when everything was shutting down. And yeah, we were just riding home from a bar one night, and I kind of convinced Erik to agree to help me shoot a film, and we followed through. As soon as we could get out of lockdown, when we got back, we went down there and shot it.
That's wonderful. So the film took about a year to make, you think, from beginning to
Oh,
end?
yeah, maybe something like that.
What was the greatest challenge in making the film?
Probably just the learning everything for the first time was a big challenge. Editing it. I think we had a full version, and then I completely tore it apart and remade it. So that was probably.
How many hours of footage did you shoot?
Erik, do you know?
It was probably somewhere between like 100, maybe around 100. Yeah, not positive on the hour count actually, but
yeah, we were shooting kind of full days.
Wow.
When we were out there.
That's the beauty of digital video. You can shoot a lot.
Yeah.
But then when you get to editing, it takes forever to weed through and try to make
Exactly.
connections. So do you think that the film made itself through the editing process, or did it stick to your original plan? Because you said you kind of had an initial version and you tossed it out.
Yeah, I think it was definitely through the editing, which is something that even from the start, I knew it was going to come together that way. I knew I did have shots that I wanted, and I had that list, but I knew that like the final version was going to come out of the editing. And I think the first time we put it together, it was just a little bit too contrived feeling, trying to keep it to a tighter story.
Right. But I think it came out really well. I think you get a real nice slice of the South, and you focused on this family, and it feels so real. And I like the pauses and the quiet moments in the film that are punctuated with, when they go to the car racing scenes, or when they're shooting guns in the backyard. Those kind of things, I think, really were well placed in the film and keep it moving very smoothly. But was there one shot that was really very challenging or difficult to achieve?
Erik,
since you're the DP, Erik, so.
Yeah, some of that was funny because like I'm so familiar with the DP, just like camera op roll or like direct. Like it was really funny to like try to get the setup we wanted, and then Virginia, who was like very much like kind of more like director mindset, trying to like make those two puzzle pieces work really well. The shot where the scene where like me and the little kid Lee are shooting BB guns at these like cans, the camera's kind of like way back, like looking at them, and we needed to both be mic'd. And we're also kind of shooting at the camera, so like had some like plate glass in front of the camera, also kind of far away. And yeah, it was all just like mostly due to like Virginia's kind of pre-plan for that, like letting it be loose and letting the scene turn into what it can turn into, but going into it with like the best like setup and kind of mindset, and then letting that be loose once we start. So like going into it with this really strict plan of like, this is what's going to happen, and then letting the scene play out when Lee shoots a real bird, like kind of in the shot.
Yeah.
And it was like, that took me like right back to being like his age. I remember like having a BB gun and shooting at birds all the time, and then hitting one and just being like, oh, I feel really bad now. And maybe like he kind of was like a little bit the same thing of like, Oh, it was just, yeah, really, really took me back to like that exact feeling of like, this is what I'm doing as a kid and everything's fine. And then you do something that felt kind of real and you're like, oh, I have repercussions, like just a
Yeah,
little hint of it. And that was just all due to like, oh, she had a great plan setting up this scene and it was shot in a way that we could kind of like exist in it without it being super, oh, we moved out of the shot, or I don't know, just it
or
worked out really
contrived.
well.
Yeah, yeah, I hear
But
you.
yeah, it was a difficult scene to kind of set up.
I think probably the most challenging scene in terms of sound was at the drag racing or the car racing speedway, because the sound is really hard to balance in that scene because it goes way up in terms of ambient noise and then way down. So I thought you did a good job balancing that. So all right, I wanted to share screen with our audience so that I can show them how to buy tickets. So most folks know that you go to njfilmfest.com. That's our normal website. And normally everything would be here, but because we are a hybrid festival, which means that we will have some in-person shows, but everything is online. We developed a new audience thanks to COVID, which we only survived because we did it online. And luckily we got people from Oklahoma, from Paris, from Alaska, from Japan, all over the world who are watching films at our festival. So we didn't want to exclude them. And, you know, for the most part, it's been a real slow movement back into the theater since we've been doing it hybrid now for, almost 2 years. So it's interesting to see the audience coming back, but there's still some people that prefer watching it in the comfort of their own home. So when you get to this site, you just click on current events, which bounces you down one little peg. And this gives you the basic information about all the films or when they will take place, but you've got to click on this button. And the buy tickets button will bounce you to our Eventive website. And this is where you'll buy tickets. You'll get more information about all the films. There is a linear schedule, but again, you want to buy tickets, you click on this red button again. And lo and behold, I listed you guys under documentary, but I also listed you under narrative feature. So, because that's the way I see this film, I see it as a documentary in sheep's clothing. I mean, it's definitely a fiction film too. So if you would like to buy tickets, you just hover over the picture and you can click the pre-order button, or you can click the learn more button, which will bring you to that page. There will be a short film that's also kind of experimental from Taiwan that's playing in tandem with Possum Kingdom called 5432. And you get to watch this film for 24 hours. So it'll be up and running on June 4th at 12 midnight, and it will play for 24 hours. The great thing about Eventive is if you start watching it at, let's say, 11:45 that evening, you still have 24 hours to finish watching it. So it's a really great deal, and you'll get to see these two wonderful films, and there's more information about it here. You want to go back to the festival site, takes you back to our welcome page, and you can click Film Guide, which gives you information about all the individual films. We're showing 35 films from 711 entries. And so we're showing the creme de la creme. We had a really sophisticated jury who was really interested in showing films that were challenging, that were innovative, that were original. And you go back up to the same page, you click on schedule, and you get a linear version of the schedule where there's pictures and descriptions of all the films. They're separated by this red line. And we come down to Possum Kingdom, and you see that it's playing on Sunday, June 4th. It's online for 24 hours. So I'm going to stop sharing so people now know how they can buy tickets. I want to say thank you to both of you for hanging out with me for this last half hour or so and chatting about your movie. And we look forward to screening it to the audience. Thank you so much.
Thanks.
Yeah, thanks for having us.